I love Shadow the Hedgehog. He's certainly one of, if not the most interesting character within the Sonic franchise, but I don't love who he's become. There's a lot of ways this character has changed over the years for better and for worse. What is that exactly? And how can we get Shadow back to where he shines the most? Let's discuss right now.
Sauce in my bag, swag.
A quick shout out to Bella the artist. This is a fan of Metal Duckles that they drew, and I gotta say my favorite thing about this drawing is like the shading. Like I just love the shading style, and Metal Duckles looks really cool in this one, and so thank you so much, Bella. I really appreciate it. Anyway, hello there beautiful human. My name is RidersDX. Welcome to my channel, where today we've got an in-depth discussion on the evolution of one of gaming's greatest rivals, Shadow the Hedgehog. So a lot of you seem to really like my video about the writing in Sonic games that I uploaded a couple weeks ago. I really enjoy reading through your comments and kind of seeing what you love and don't love about the storylines from various Sonic games. I think it's a topic that's really fun to discuss, and a lot of that is due to the characters that inhabit Sonic's world. I mean, when you have scenes like this, combined with music like this, it's hard not to become the stereotypical Grey's Anatomy fan sometimes, which is just someone who cries and cries. And Shadow the Hedgehog is one of the greatest examples of that, and so that's why I decided to expand upon those ideas specifically when it comes to this character, as I think Shadow is a clear-cut example of some of the issues that I had with the writing of Sonic games as of late. And so if you want to check out that initial video, then I will leave a link in the top right corner for you to check out whenever you like to. But to understand what Shadow's become and why I have an issue with it, I think it's important to go back to where Shadow came from and kind of just take a look at what made Shadow such an endearing character back then, and how he's changed over the years and how he's being portrayed now. So let's go ahead, get into a cramped little time capsule, and take a look directly at what it was about this black hedgehog that made him so popular that to this very day makes him still one of the main faces of the Sonic franchise. So I've divided this video into 4 parts. The first part chronicles like Shadow's journey throughout Sonic Adventure 2. In my opinion, it's what made Shadow great. The second part kind of chronicles Shadow between Sonic Heroes to Sonic 06, which is what I think made Shadow the Hedgehog a more confusing character. And then the last part is what Shadow is nowadays. And I'll just leave it there for now so you can kind of like find out for yourself what my opinion on what Shadow is nowadays. And then there's a fourth part, which I'm going to leave as a surprise for now, because I don't really know how to explain it without going through these first 3 parts. And so just hang tight there, you'll see how it all wraps up together in the end. But I think this is going to be a really fun discussion about Shadow the Hedgehog. But to kick things off, we're going to go back to how Shadow debuted, which was in Sonic Adventure 2. So if you're watching this video, you're probably really familiar with how Shadow began and what his story was like in Sonic Adventure 2, but to just quickly summarize, Shadow was a project created by Gerald Robotnik, who is the grandfather of Dr. Eggman, or Ivor Robotnik, whichever name you want to use, and he was created aboard the Space Colony Ark 50 years ago, or is it more like 70 years since Adventure 2 came out 20 years ago, so I don't know, I guess 70 years is technically the right term for it now, but Shadow was created for a multitude of reasons, and it would take forever to kind of go through that. But when Shadow was created, there was something that happened upon the Space Colony Ark that caused the entire facility to shut down and caused Shadow to be sealed away for 50 years within a capsule until Dr. Eggman freed him and used him as a weapon to take over the world basically. And so you all know the story from then on out, you know, Sonic and Shadow meet and Sonic's mistaken for Shadow, and Shadow goes through like his whole like shindig, you know, trying to collect all the Chaos Emeralds to help Dr. Eggman conquer the world, when in reality he just wanted to destroy the world. And so it all wraps up to the very end where Shadow met his untimely death, and that is a really horrible and short explanation as to Shadow's story, because there is just so much more to Shadow the Hedgehog's story within this game beyond those like really like quick and sloppy details. And these small specific details about Shadow has made him to be such an endearing character and made him really popular when this game came out. So I guess my question now is, why was Shadow such a popular character? besides his edginess that obviously made him appeal to a lot of us as children, because let's face it, we all loved the cool and edgy guys as a kid. You know, we all wanted to grow up really quickly, and we all liked things that weren't so kiddie but still were, if that makes any sense. You know, Shadow was still for kids, but he seemed like he was for adults as a kid, and so that weird like conundrum, I guess, I don't know if that's the right term to use, made Shadow this really endearing and likable character. But besides this edginess though, something about Shadow that I thought was really great about him was that he had motivations that were clearly outlined. He had a clear reason for doing what he did that was easy to empathize for, even if he was inherently wrong. His motivation created like multiple dimensions to him within this game that somehow made sense together, and so I picked up a few scenes within Sonic Adventure 2 that helped to explain these different dimensions specifically and really help to see what it was about Shadow the Hedgehog within Sonic Adventure 2 that had made him such a fully fleshed out character, despite how fast paced the storyline is and how little time it had to really flesh out details. And so the first side I wanted to mention was his cocky side. You know, that snarky little side that's a little bit fun, that pokes a lot of fun at the people around him, especially Sonic whenever he was with Sonic. And so this is the scene where Sonic and Shadow meet for the second time. Shadow has some pretty funny words to exchange with Sonic.
Hey, that's...
That blue hedgehog again, of all places.
I found you, Faker.
Faker? I think you're the fake hedgehog around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Ha! You're not even good enough
I'll
to
make
be
you eat
my
those
fake.
words.
So we've seen Shadow as this bad guy basically. You know, he seems like someone that's there to antagonize the main protagonist, and he's there to kind of shake up the world that Sonic is in, that we've become so used to up to this point. And so Shadow on the surface just seems like a fun character that's there to make the plot a little bit more intense and just make it a little bit more interesting for Sonic, because, you know, Sonic could only battle Dr. Eggman for so long before it becomes a little bit stale. And so throwing some new people here and there is obviously going to spice things up. But besides this cocky side to Shadow, Shadow also had this really angry side, and I'm sure it's a side that we all know very well. I mean, it's definitely been mean to death at this point, but he had a very strong anger within him that motivated his hatred for the world within this game. So here's a cutscene where Shadow is at Radical Highway, and he kind of shows where his motivation for his anger comes from.
How pathetic.
Find them before they escape!
Maria! What?
Shadow, I beg of you, please do
Maria!
it for me. For all the people on that planet. Sayonara, Shadow the Hedgehog.
I still remember what I promised you. For the people of this planet, I promise you. Revenge!
And so obviously the trauma that he experienced with trying to protect Maria but failing to do so created this anger with him that he's obviously had built up for such a long time. And so that is such a great foundation for the motivation that Shadow the Hedgehog has within this game to do what he does, and it definitely gets expanded upon throughout the entire game. And I think that with the little scenes that we got where we got to see Shadow's character development, it was kind of the right amount for a game like this to allow people to really fall in love with his character, despite the things that he was doing which were clearly and inherently wrong. But there was one last side that kind of helps to tie all these things together, and that really makes Shadow blossom within this game, and that is his heartfelt side. And so one of my favorite cutscenes in all Sonic games is actually this cutscene where Shadow and Amy are talking, and Amy helps Shadow to kind of have a breakthrough in terms of his motivations. And so let's go ahead and walk down memory lane and take a look at this scene.
Look, it's Shadow! I really gotta stop whining. Everyone's trying their best to help out, and so must I! Shadow, we need you. Please help us.
It's all going according to plan. There's no reason for me to help them. Besides, there's no way to save anyone.
There has to be. I know that people fight over the most trivial things. Some people may be selfish, like the professor said. But they're basically good if they try their best and never give up on their wishes. They always have a reason to be happy. That's why you should help them out. Saving them is a good thing. Shadow, I beg you, please do it for them. Give them a chance.
Shadow, I beg of you, please, do it for me. For
Maria!
the future, for all people who live on that planet, give them a chance to be happy. Let them live for their dreams. Shadow, I know you can do it. That's the reason why you were brought into this world. Sayonara, Shadow the
That's what I
Hedgehog.
promised her. And I must keep that promise. That's what
Shadow?
Maria wished for. I've got to go now. I have to keep my promise to Maria and you.
I really like this scene because it kind of helps to tie his cocky and his angry side together. Shadow clearly had motivations within Sonic Adventure 2 for doing what he did. He thought that what Maria wanted was for him to take revenge upon the world for her untimely death. But within some reasoning and some maybe like memory triggers that Amy must have given him when she was talking to him, it was revealed that Maria's true request for the world was actually for the world to be at peace and for Shadow to protect the world. And so that's such a crazy revelation to happen at the end of the game, and I still remember when I saw it for the very first time, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome, and Shadow is such an endearing and lovable character. Shadow was fleshed out extremely well within Sonic Adventure 2 despite how fast the game must have felt at times, where it didn't really feel like we could get too much character development throughout the story. And he was just written in a way that made people care about him. And despite some of the dialogue being really cheesy, you know, I was a kid so I ate it up, and as an adult I still eat it up, you know. I think there's something about Sonic the Hedgehog in general which is like, you got to expect a good level of cheese within these storylines, because without it, it just wouldn't be Sonic. Like, Sonic's been cheesy since its very inception, and so if you don't think Sonic's supposed to be a cheesy franchise, then you've either skipped every Sonic cutscene in existence or are delusional. Anyway, his death at the end of the game only made it that much heartbreaking because you feel like you've finally gotten to know Shadow by the end of this game. His cocky side represents what we saw at first, especially if you played the hero story first, because that's the only side you got to see to him. And most people obviously went to play the hero story first because most people buy Sonic Adventure 2 to play as Sonic. You know, that's just reality. And so that's the side that you see of Shadow as first, so you're kind of like, well, he's kind of a jerk, but I wonder why he's a jerk. You know, that's probably the thought that people had. And then you see that he's actually a very angry character, and you see some of his motivation behind it, and so now you're thinking that, okay, wow, he actually has some baggage that he has to carry around with him, and that is why he's acting this way. But seeing him kind of have that revelation at the end that having that much anger isn't healthy for him is not actually what Maria wanted, it was just such a great way to conclude Shadow's story within this game, because he starts off as this like sort of lost person, but still highly motivated to do what he feels like is the right thing to do, and then in the end he finally figures out what actually is the right thing to do. And I don't know, I could talk about Sonic Adventure 2's story all day and just love it all day long, and I'll never get tired of it. It's just such a great story, and it really just showed me the potential that stories in Sonic games have, and that's why I constantly go back to this one whenever I'm citing like good examples of good storytelling within Sonic games. But Sonic Adventure 2 was just one game, and it was actually supposed to be the end of Shadow the Hedgehog's story. But now we're going to go into the second part of this video, which is what made Shadow confusing. And so now we're crossing into the territory where Shadow returned. Shadow was only ever intended to appear in one game, but because of his increasing popularity, it was inevitable that he would return. But this right here is a primary reason as to why Shadow's story from here on out would become a messy conundrum. It all started with Sonic Heroes, where Sonic Team made their first mistake with his revival, which was essentially not addressing it. Because of Sonic Heroes' strict design choice to not focus on a story, people were not given an explanation as to why Shadow was there. There were some hints within Sonic Heroes cutscenes that point to him being an android, but it's never confirmed and it's just left for interpretation. And so it's like they just tried pasting Shadow in there for fan service, but they didn't really want to deal with the fact that, well, he's not supposed to be here, he's supposed to be dead. And so to not address that depth within the first major game appearance that he made, I think was a big mistake. It definitely should have been addressed at least, given some more information beyond, oh, he could be an android, but we don't know yet, and this is not the game where we're gonna focus on that. It just sort of made things confusing and just put things on hold. So it didn't necessarily destroy Shadow the Hedgehog yet, but it definitely made it seem like, well, what's going on? There should be some kind of explanation, some sort of reason as to why Shadow is here again. And so in comes Shadow the Hedgehog, the video game. And so here's how I would describe the role of Shadow the Hedgehog, the video game, in terms of developing this character. I might get a lot of hate for this, but I truly believe that Sonic Team just did not know how to explain Shadow the Hedgehog coming back from his presumed death in a way that made sense and was satisfying. That's probably one reason why they settled on almost completely ignoring it in Sonic Heroes. In their minds, it probably had to be this huge ordeal, at least huge enough to warrant its own game, hence the presence of an entire alien race that would end up being connected to Shadow's origin. But beyond this, it just seemed like because Sonic Team didn't know what to do with Shadow, they just decided to throw every idea they had into one pot. And so, to quickly explain the structure of this game doesn't have like a linear storyline that you follow through to kind of discover all the different answers to all these questions we had about Shadow the Hedgehog's return for a long time. Instead, the game opts to give you the choice. It gives you the choice to either make Shadow the Hedgehog a good guy or a bad guy or something in between. And so, as a result, pretty much anything that you find out with Shadow the Hedgehog through these cutscenes is not actually canon and doesn't really make sense in the context of Shadow's past. So ironically, it's really not worth going into too much detail about how Shadow's own damn game affected his characterization, because it's entirely unclear as to how it truly evolved Shadow the Hedgehog due to its setup. Pretty much everything you could have found out about this character throughout this game is not real, is not what the actual story is. And so this timeline that we have between Sonic Heroes to the end of Shadow the Hedgehog, we don't know what happened. And so as a result, it's just like, it basically cops out of explaining Shadow's story again, but this time in a way that's really aggravating, because instead of just trying to write one really good way to explain why Shadow the Hedgehog is the way that he is now, instead they drew all these different ideas as to like give people a choice of how they want to make Shadow the Hedgehog. Now, I can commend Sonic Team because I actually think that this idea has a lot of potential, and I'd love to see it done with like say a custom character, because that is a character that would make a lot of sense to have this with, because that's a character that you can craft in your own vision and make their own motivations according to what you want them to do. But Shadow the Hedgehog is not that character. Shadow is a character that is supposed to have clear motivations. He's someone that's supposed to have his own opinions and such. And so that's why a bunch of these scenarios that Shadow the Hedgehog puts him through just don't make sense, It doesn't make sense for Shadow to blindly follow the Black Arms. It doesn't make sense for Shadow to fight side by side with Sonic in a happy manner. None of this stuff really makes sense. There's like one or two endings that I feel like maybe could be feasible, but they're not actually like the real thing, because like I said, this game doesn't make anything canon except the last story. Now, I can hear already what some people are gonna say. He has amnesia, so of course he does not have that clear motivation that I love so much about him, and I can understand that. But like I said, most of these pathways, in my opinion, is not a realistic way of how Shadow would have acted under these circumstances. Him going completely dark or completely heroic, those endings don't make sense for Shadow, even with amnesia. And so I know that was the whole point of the game, which was to give players the choice to craft Shadow the Hedgehog, but I just feel like that inherent concept goes against what it is I loved about Shadow the Hedgehog himself. I think it's a concept that I wouldn't mind Sonic Team approaching again in the future, but Shadow the Hedgehog was the wrong character to do that with, because I think that just misses the point of who Shadow the Hedgehog is. He's not someone that you could make like completely evil or completely heroic. he's someone that's heavily motivated by something. And that motivation is what guides his actions. And so that's why in Sonic Adventure 2, his motivation to bring justice to Maria is the reason why he acted in that way. It's also the same reason as to why he turned and saved the world at the very end of the game as well. But Shadow the Hedgehog kind of just makes it seem like that he's a character that doesn't have that motivation and that he's easily swayed with whatever anyone is saying. And so, I don't know, I think even with having amnesia, I think Shadow should still have that like core concept to him. And if anything, that core concept should kind of play into how he discovers his memory and what paths he chooses. And so, at the very least, the last story does provide some closure in terms of specific plot points, but it hardly feels anywhere near as satisfying as Sonic Adventure 2 did. The story basically resolves with Shadow deciding to throw everything he had been working towards away and to just move on with his life. And frankly, I think that's what Sonic Team wanted to do just by making this game. But on the bright side, we did get a tiny but sick remix of Live and Learn that I just wanted to paste in here because while making this video, I heard it and I was like, oh, this is so good. I do have some ideas as to how they could have approached Shadow the Hedgehog a little bit differently, but I'll kind of leave that to the end actually, so stay to the very end to kind of hear my thoughts about that. But moving beyond Shadow the Hedgehog, we now approach Sonic 06, which chronicles Shadow's efforts in moving on and focusing on the present. So Shadow's story in this game is very much focused on the overall plot of the game, but Shadow actually has some decent moments of character development here that I wanted to point out, and yeah, I'm actually got some positive things to say about Sonic 06's story, but hear me out, because once you see these scenes and kind of hear them in context, then I really do think you'll get to appreciate this part of Sonic 06 specifically in terms of developing Shadow the Hedgehog further. So a big reason for this is actually Mephiles. I think Mephiles was a great antagonist for Shadow the Hedgehog. One reason was because Mephiles took Shadow's form. He was literally derived from Shadow's shadow. And so Mephiles' role in Shadow's story is basically to tempt him to return to a mindset he had very much embodied back in Sonic Adventure 2. So take a look at this cutscene between Shadow and Mephiles, where Mephiles reveals a shocking revelation to Shadow.
So, decided to void your return ticket now, did you?
Why are you here? Did you ruin this world?
The answer's yes and no. Perhaps it's better to show you. Yes, that's you. After the world was devastated by Iblis's flames, what do you think happened? A search for the guilty. Who did this, you may ask? Humanity wasn't just jealous of your power. They feared it. They used this incident as an excuse to hunt you down. Come with me, Shadow. Let us punish this foolish world of humanity. It's only fair to give back what was intended for you. You have every right to want justice.
That's absurd. Whatever it is you want to do, you can do it alone.
You forgive humanity this folly, then?
I determine my own destiny.
I really enjoyed seeing Shadow show that growth in being above who he was before and living in his current timeline, because the Shadow the Hedgehog in the past would have taken what Mephiles said to heart and acted upon it. But Shadow the Hedgehog, after experiencing all the events that he had, has decided that he is above that, and that he's just going to live in the present and not get angry over what's going to happen to him in the past. And so I really think that showed a great growth in Shadow the Hedgehog and was just the perfect way to wrap up his story from the previous games. If anything, I feel like this is something that should have been addressed within Shadow the Hedgehog itself, but it's really nice to see it like put here and kind of give us some continuity between Sonic games. The game also had another great character development moment for Shadow that I wanted to point out as well. So here's this cutscene where Omega confesses something to Shadow.
What just happened?
Shadow. The one that defeats and seals you in the future is me.
It's so unfair. Shadow's always here to defend the world. Despite that,
eventually, when something or someone is seen as too powerful, it is seen as a threat. And then the world becomes its enemy.
Shadow? Even if you believe everyone in the world will be against you, know that I'll always remain by your side. Remember that.
I will.
My favorite part with this scene is Rouge's final statement to Shadow, because it kind of just shows what Shadow values most in life, both in this present moment and in the past as well, and that is the people that he cares about, which at this very state is Rouge and Omega. He's devoted to fighting for them in the same way that he fought for Maria. And I think that was a beautiful way to wrap Shadow's arc up within this era, because that's something that stayed consistent within Shadow this whole time, which was his motivation. He always had a clear motivation, and his motivation before was to avenge Maria in the way that she wanted him to. But now Shadow's motivation is to protect the people that he loves in the present, and that is Rouge and Omega. So they might have screwed up his journey in getting to Sonic 06, but I thought Sonic 06 actually did a really good job of moving Shadow forward in a way that made sense. And so it's too bad that they didn't really continue within the story direction beyond this, because I would have loved to see what they would have done with Shadow after this. But what they instead did with Shadow afterwards is completely flip his narrative upside down. So here is what made Shadow a Shadow. You see what I did there? Yeah, you did. But you know what, the joke actually kind of fits, because that is a good way to kind of describe what they did with the Sonic franchise after this. They made Sonic the Hedgehog a lot more comedic and a lot more lighthearted. And of course, this is something that, as I discussed in my previous video, a lot of people have taken issue with, just because it seems like they've shifted Sonic a little bit too much in this direction. And I think a character that really shows this very well is Shadow the Hedgehog. And so I will say that Shadow didn't actually have too many major plot appearances in this new era of Sonic, but for the ones that he did have, I had mixed feelings about. I would say probably the most significant one is actually something that I probably wouldn't count too much towards like Shadow's development, and that's his appearance in Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Now, I go into this discussion with the preface that this actually is not supposed to be canon. This is a game that's supposed to take place in the Sonic Boom universe, and so as a result, this is a completely like new reboot of the Sonic franchise, and so these characters have whatever new histories that they want the characters to have. And so with that in mind, I can't be too mad at this one scene, but this one scene that we saw Shadow in, he says this one line that just really sent me. and it really sent me because it does not seem like a thing that Shadow should say at this point in time after everything he's gone through. And so here's the scene in question.
Not so fast, Sonic.
Shadow, what are you doing here?
Not a great time, Shadow. I'm a little busy saving the world.
Saving the world? You? Don't make me laugh. You're weak. And you know what makes you weak? Your loyalty to your pathetic friends. You're not going through that portal. I'm gonna show you just how weak you are.
I know that Sonic Boom is not with the main canon, but I can't help it. I absolutely can't help it. After seeing that awesome scene of character development in Sonic 06, to have Shadow just say that, it just really broke my heart, because like that's not who Shadow is, and it completely throws away the heart of Shadow. And it throws away something that I really love about him. I'm all for franchises rebooting themselves to give the franchise a new coat of paint and something interesting, and to just give a new story, but this just completely like overwrites the development that Shadow had beforehand, and I don't like it. I don't like it, and I don't like how Shadow has been portrayed in Sonic Boom. Like, he had some funny moments here and there, but overall, it just completely like disregards one of the most important things about Shadow the Hedgehog, which was his heart. Shadow the Hedgehog has a huge heart, and this new narrative makes it really hard for him to show that, because God forbid that the Sonic franchise goes a little bit deep and shows that these characters have something beyond like their lighthearted jokes and just having a good time overall battling Dr. Eggman. So if anything, I want this game to be an example to writers of where to not take Shadow, because this just completely disregards any development that he had beforehand, and I don't like it. And like I said, I understand that it's a reboot, that it's not supposed to affect the main canon, but that doesn't mean I have to like it. So as for the betrayals of Shadow that actually are canon, because of the series' shift to more lighthearted tone, I actually saw that the writers tried to bring out that more snarky side to Shadow the Hedgehog that we saw a little bit in Sonic Adventure 2, but not all the time. And this came out to okay-ish results. And so I do want to say this, just so it doesn't make it seem like that I'm against like any kind of comedy within Sonic games. I'm okay with Shadow being a little bit funny. In fact, I welcome it. His cocky attitude in Sonic Adventure 2 was one of the initial reasons I had an initial interest in him, because it was just entertaining to watch him. It was entertaining to see how he interacted with Sonic. It was entertaining to see how he interacted with Rouge, especially in the beginning. I thought it made him a multi-dimensional character. You know, Shadow shouldn't be 100% serious all the time. You know, Shadow should have a little bit of snark, a little bit of charm to him, especially since he's gone through all these things and now he's out of it. And so since he's put his past behind him, it makes perfect sense for Shadow to ease up a little bit and have a little bit of fun with the main cast. With that being said, it should not be the thing that's there 100%. But I did go ahead and scope for some clips of Shadow the Hedgehog in this modern era that I thought was actually really funny, and I would like to see a little bit more in terms of like jokes like that. And so here are some of the clips I found.
Oh, Shadow!
You again?
Just wanted to let you know I ran into our old pal Sonic today, and he did not have the nicest things to say about you.
Shadow? He is weak. That wind bag? Good. Never beat me. What a weak wind bag he is.
This aggression shall not stand. Sonic and his friends shall pay. Time to take out the trash.
Already on it. Then you'll go beat up Team Sonic, right?
Well, Shadow, now that you and Sonic have finished your little ego competition, do you think we can address the real problem?
We're far from finished.
You boys.
So I think what these clips show is that there is potential in letting Shadow ease up a little bit as a character and become more playful. Like I said, it's natural for him to feel this way, especially after everything that he went through. But I think should a future Sonic game have a little bit more of a serious tone, it'll be important for them to tap into what made Shadow the Hedgehog so endearing in Adventure 2, not making 100% a caricature of his former self. Because, like I said, due to the tone of recent Sonic games, Shadow just has no room to portray that side to him. So when that that time comes where Shadow can portray that side to him, I kind of am interested in seeing what they do with him, because, you know, there's so many things that they could do in terms of developing Shadow's character a little bit more, but obviously like his main arc is over with at this point. And so maybe that's one reason why they went with this shift in tone, because it would have been difficult to expand upon what they already did with Shadow at this point. But I just hate seeing the heartfelt side of Shadow being paid dust, because that's one of my favorite parts of him, and this new shift in narrative just does not allow Shadow to showcase that, and that's disappointing. So I don't know. I understand that there might not be a lot of story to tell with Shadow in terms of games from here on out, but I still want that side to him to very much be acknowledged, and just don't make it seem like the Shadow is nothing but a cocky caricature of his former self that just wants to beat Sonic at everything. Like, that's not what Shadow is. Shadow's above that. Shadow is not that kind of character. So I don't know. Some of these recent portrayals of him, while they can be funny, it just makes Shadow seem really shallow, and that is not who he is at all. But going back to my initial video on this topic, I think a balance of both lightheartedness and deeper storytelling is the key formula for Sonic games, and Shadow was one of the best examples of balancing that back in Sonic Adventure 2. Every game afterwards either tried to recreate this or went for one side or the other, and it just paled in comparison. So I don't know what the answer is in terms of how to make Shadow better, but I will say that these are the characteristics about Shadow the Hedgehog that I love, and I really want Sonic Team to keep in mind when they're writing for the next game, because Shadow the Hedgehog is a great character. He's got such a history to him, and he's got such a huge fan base because of that. And it's foolish not to try to take advantage of that. It's foolish not to try to create something that's really worthwhile and really interesting just because you're too afraid to go deeper again because of criticism that you got in the past because of it. It's time to travel into deep waters and really just go there with Sonic games. You really just give us something that we really care about, and Shadow the Hedgehog is a prime example of something that they gave that we absolutely did care about. Now, with that being said, the main purpose of this video is basically done, but while making this video and going through Shadow's story entirely, I stumbled upon some things that I just wanted to briefly talk about here. So it's very clear that I love how Shadow was brought up. I love how he was portrayed in Sonic Adventure 2. I love how his story began and ended in that game. But I also did criticize a lot of the journey of bringing Shadow from Sonic Adventure 2 to Sonic 06. And it kind of just clicked in my head that there were some things that I saw within Shadow the Hedgehog's cutscenes that I actually think would have made a really good explanation for how Shadow got from Sonic Heroes to Sonic 06. And so I thought that this would just be like a cool thing to talk about the end over here, and just kind of like imagine what it would have been like to actually have like a good way of explaining why Shadow lost his memory and how he came to who he was in Sonic 06. So like I said before, because of the structure of Shadow the Hedgehog, the game, it's pretty useless trying to analyze Shadow's character in any way. But the one aspect of the story that I would love to see get more expansion on, and actually would have made the whole idea of Shadow losing his motivation worthwhile, is the specific ending where Shadow is on the Space Colony arc and is basically searching for that motivation. So it got me thinking, why not make a story around Shadow trying to discover that motivation and getting heartbroken that he can't find it? So the ending where Shadow states that he should have never been created is what that conflict could have led to. And so here are the couple of cutscenes that I'm talking about.
Damn it! What does it all mean? These memories, the doctor's actions and words. Nothing makes sense. Was it real?
It's been a long time, Shadow.
Who are you? And how do you know my name?
I know you, Shadow the Hedgehog. You killed everyone I loved. My family, Maria. I've been waiting all my life for this day.
What? Me? And Maria?
Maria was like a sister to me. She was the only family I knew. And because of you, she was killed. witnessing it all. The plan to create that horrifying evil creature. That black creature and that insane professor who unleashed it all.
Oh, the professor created me with Black Doom?
You don't fool me! It's not just about Maria. Thanks to you, everyone I knew and loved was killed when the Ark was destroyed. Worst of all, my family! Finally, justice is served!
If what you say is true, then I will respectfully accept my fate.
You mean to tell me that you really don't remember a thing?
But I just need some time to uncover the real truth.
What is this defiance?
Black Doom, I need to know the truth. Am I the one the humans refer to as the Evil One? Tell me. I need to know.
It is true. I created you. You are a part of me.
Hey, Shadow! You okay?
If that's true, then I'll have to accept my responsibilities for my crimes. I will avenge the victims who died aboard the Ark on that tragic day.
The humans seem to have convinced you with this absurdity. Therefore, I have no choice but to kill you too.
Finally, I've got all the Chaos Emeralds.
Shadow, this isn't over yet. The Black Arms will rise again.
I am Shadow the Hedgehog, a research experiment gone deadly wrong. I've caused so much destruction. I should never have been created. This is who I am.
Hey, don't go there! Yet, things may not be what they seem. You could be.
I don't know why, but whenever I watch these scenes, I kind of want to grab some tissues. Because what this ending deals with is not just Shadow struggling to find his place in the world, but also the pain that he endures for being considered a dangerous weapon rather than a living organism with ideas and feelings. So just put yourself in Shadow's shoes and imagine what it's like to feel guilt for something that you have absolutely no control over. Like, can you relate to that? I mean, there's definitely certain situations within our lives that we can't control, but we feel bad about nonetheless because they still happen and they still hurt people. And so just because of the simple fact that Shadow was made to be a weapon is really heartbreaking to him, because that's clearly not what he wants to be. His tone within that ending says it all. And so I really think that could have been a great way to take Shadow's story, because, you know, as he would have found out more about himself, he would have seen all the destruction that he was designed to cause, and it just probably would have been a really heartbreaking thing to him, because when you realize that you are not like everyone else, that you are made for specific intentions and you were meant to carry those out, and that's how people see you, what do you do at that point? That commander was really fixated on seeing Shadow as the enemy. And he's definitely not the only person within that world that sees Shadow in that way. And so how do you fight against that? My heart was really there for Shadow, like playing through that ending. Even if it wasn't real, it should have been, because I really think that's a realistic way of how Shadow would have handled having lost his memory and finding out that he was made for all these different reasons. That's a perfectly realistic way of how Shadow would have reacted. Another reason that I would have loved to see this cutscene specifically become canon is because it actually connects really well to a certain game that I think we all forgot about in terms of Shadow's character development, and that is Sonic Battle. I know everyone forgets that this game had an amazing story, but just to remind you, this game had an amazing story. So I'm just gonna put this scene out over here and let it do the talking first. This scene would have followed perfectly after that plotline from Shadow the Hedgehog that I was talking about and served as a perfect way to tie Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic 06 together. This scene represents Shadow accepting the fact that though he was created as a weapon, he is not actually a danger to society. And I think that is a great revelation that Shadow had, and whether he had it in Shadow the Hedgehog or Sonic Battle, I think would have been totally appropriate for him, because getting heartbroken over discovering that you are a weapon and that's what you're for and that's how people will ultimately see you is like a terrible thing for Shadow the Hedgehog, because obviously he is not motivated to do that. He's motivated by what Maria told him to do, which was to give people a chance to be happy. But having that revelation in Sonic Battle that he's not actually controlled by that he actually has free will and that he's able to not be that weapon and that he can prove to people that that's not who he is, that ultimately gave Shadow a lot of reassurance that even though that's how he was created, it doesn't have to be how he lives his life. And I think that's just such a great lesson overall to give through storytelling, is that even if you were meant or expected by others to do something, that's not what you have to do. You have your own free will and you can define your own purpose. And sorry for getting all philosophical here, but I really think this is why I love Shadow the Hedgehog, because he can invoke these kind of discussions, and that's why I've been talking for what feels like ages. And so Sonic Team did have some great ideas here. They just couldn't put it together, but I guess I can rest easy knowing that a good story was in there. It just needed someone to kind of sort through all the rubble and put it all together. And just seeing like in Sonic 06 how Shadow was tempted by Mephiles to be angry at humans for still seeing him as a weapon and punishing him for it, not letting that get to his head, I think that just would have been a great way to wrap up Shadow's story. Obviously, this is not a full in-depth explanation as to how Shadow would have discovered his memory and become the character that he is today, but nonetheless, I think it would have been a really great thing to explore a little bit more. And man, I wish Shadow the Hedgehog wasn't the game that it was, because Shadow the Hedgehog really deserved more than that. But that's the past, so hopefully from here on out, Sega and Sonic Team can remember what made Shadow the Hedgehog such a great character and keep that in mind when writing him in the next Sonic game. Like, don't let these characteristics that we love about this guy just go to waste because you're afraid to go a little bit deep again and try to write like a more complicated story. This is what makes Shadow the Hedgehog who he is and why people love him so much. So embrace it and continue putting him in great stories. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I had to say. I'm sorry that this video was so long. I definitely was not intending it to be, but there's just so much to talk about Shadow the Hedgehog, and there's so many other things I could talk about too. You know, I could talk even more about what I want Shadow to do from here on out, and so if that's something you all will be interested in hearing about, then let me know in the comment section below. But I don't know what his future holds, but I do know what makes him a great character, and I do know that if you try to keep including those characteristics in him from here on out, then he will continue to be a great character. But yeah, thank you so much. Okay, please give this video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to my channel if you like videos like these, want to see more in the future, follow me on Twitter or Twitch, and join my Discord server, the Spongy Garden. Special shout out to Reese Gaming, Team Riders Sonic Gamer, Glitch Dolphin, Desiree Webb, New Gamer Hub, Andrew Coughlin, Maze Muner, and Abraham Muner. These are my patrons / YouTube members. If you'd like to become a patron or YouTube member, get access to a whole bunch of different perks, and please check out the links in the description box below. But alright, this is Riders, riding out.